Yeah? Okay. Hello, everyone. I will hold my talk in English. We actually have to find out right now how much more time we have left. So therefore, I might have to speed up. Okay. So just quickly, I want to introduce myself. I'm Katrin Müller-Russo. I'm a professor currently for design and ecology at the Köln International School of Design in Germany. And yeah, it's like I called my talk Lab Culture. This is how currently my classes are called that I hold with students. This is about biomaterials that we're working with, but also the creation of a culture of collaborating with other living organisms. Oops, no, other way. Just as a representation, quick image. This is Caspar David Friedrich. Are we okay?
Yes.
How many? How much?
Go.
Yeah. Okay. This, I think, is a nice representation of how nature was viewed at some point from above, kind of looking down, controlling it, being especially above all. And then when we look at the evolution and look at how everything is connected, we're just a small little peck up there. This is also just talking about the complexity of our systems. Like when we look at the ocean, you can get an idea of if we just take out one of the equations, one fish, one part of the system is taken out, everything gets basically, falls apart to a degree. This is again like a representation of different views, different perspectives on nature. I was talking, had this discussion with a colleague about James Watt, developer of the steam engine. His view is that nature can be conquered if we can but find her weak side. Oren Lyons, faithkeeper of the Onondaga, what you call resources, we call our relatives. Oh, sorry. And John Muir, a naturalist, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. We can be a bit faster with that. This is just my background, where I worked. I'm going to show a few projects as well. Just quickly, I studied in Germany industrial design. I worked in Germany for a little bit, went to New York, started to work there on projects with architects, toy designers, had a focus on sustainable design already while I was studying. And then also started teaching at UPenn, Pratt, Parsons, became a colleague of Ignacio. And I'm going to show a few projects, just a selection. This was one of the first things that I did in New York. I was asked by Material Connection to curate and design a show of sustainable products. And so we selected from everywhere a few products to be showcased. And at the same time also I came up with this label which is based on nutrition facts for food, that we actually should also have labels for products, clothing, anything, so we can identify what the ingredients are and where they're coming from, where they're going to as well. The phrase waste equals food is coined by William McDonough, who worked a lot with in context of architecture and sustainability. And this is a project which was part of my first job in Germany after I graduated. And it's it wasn't the kind of, let's say, the most glamorous job, but it's one that is still dear to my heart. because it has all these aspects that we talked about a lot at this conference, which were on social aspects of design, environmental aspects of design, and economic aspects of design, which are all part of the 3 E's, part of sustainability. We worked with, that was right after the wall came down in Berlin. We worked with women from East Germany, former East Germany, to bring them back into the first labor market. We trained them to have skills working with metal in the shop, and we also looked for consistent waste in and around Berlin. So this, for example, was a waste paper basket that was developed out of leftover metal sheets from a factory that was producing washers. And so these sheets were essentially there as a consistent weight, and we planned and designed for them to be used in production. And on the other hand, usually you would, take a sheet, take out, punch out the holes in order to create the waste paper basket. So these things kind of came easily together. One of my first larger jobs in New York was the design of the first sustainable daycare center in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. It was a very exciting time because it was about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. There wasn't a lot of this sustainability happening in New York. And because I arrived there kind of at the right time and I never saw myself that way before, but became an expert. I was part of all these amazing projects, and there was not even back then at the department for design and construction, they didn't even have a sustainability department yet. It was just recently created with 3 people. I was allowed to red spec the construction materials. So I had a lot of responsibility, which I love to have, but also it was amazing to be part of these projects right from the beginning. So I looked into, did material studies to look into different kind of sustainable materials and suggested them to the building department. And the whole building was also created, the interior as well as the building, out of sustainable materials. I'm going to show now, do a big jump, showing something like a project that is also very dear to me. It was a residency that I had gotten at the European Ceramic Work Center in the Netherlands. I always had a very big interest in craft and materials and in techniques of how to apply them to materials and also then apply them to products. So this was kind of the final exhibition at the end that we get invited to. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the process. What is nice about this residency is that it's specific to ceramicists, or like there are technicians that work there, craft people that work there, but they invite people that have never necessarily worked with ceramics, which was me. And they essentially allow to become part of this process and to expand the knowledge of the entire center. So the process of kind of creating form or the seating object was to look at this kind of continuously folded surface that was part of the design process. Here you can see kind of how that became, like how you can make a 2D sheet three-dimensionally structural. Then I was also always interested in this kind of going back and forth between the analog and the digital design process. So this was scanned, it was printed again, it was tested in terms of pressure as weight is applied, it was tested as a model out of cardboard. And then the whole process was I would say an insane one. Because it essentially had to be molded. So pieces were printed out, put into like a large positive form, which you can see on the left, just half of it. Then they were molded with these kind of rubber and other materials. And then press molding was used as a ceramic process in order to apply into the mold. These are the pieces of the mold, so you can see how they might come together. This is part of the process of working kind of like with a living material, essentially. And these were kind of like the small inventions that we had to do along the way in order to make the process work. And these are the pieces as they're about to be taken into the kiln. What was very interesting as part of the process was also that as this is essentially a living material, I would call it, and while it's put into the kiln, it gets actually into a liquid state. And we had to, we thought initially we need to support the structure in order to make it not fall apart, and supported it, and it kind of essentially worked against it. And we later realized that just the form and the folding and the structure that derives from it, because the skin is just 1 centimeter thick, just made it stand up and hold up by itself. So that was also part of where this design process of how we generated the initial form then essentially applied to it becoming structural as a full-scale model prototype. That was at the exhibition. We did 3 different variations in glazes, and part of this process is also interesting because you don't know whether something works until you open the kiln, the door, and it could also be a disaster. Initially I thought this was one because there were several layers of glaze that were applied, and it was already quite bold to say, okay, we're going to make this one pink. In addition to it being pink, it wrinkled. And I hated it at first because I thought, okay, this is too far. Like skin color, okay, but wrinkly skin color. And then I really started to love it because it was something that just happened by accident. It became a happy accident. It actually is so unique, I will never be able to recreate it. I don't know how it happened. I have an idea, but it's about the surface tension of the layers of glaze. But it became my favorite one. And then we did it with the same form. We did different variations of glaze, also to see how the character of the pieces essentially change. Like a matte white, which was really all about the light and the shadow, and the black one is kind of like a Darth Vader version. With the reflection of its surrounding. I will now jump because it's just like a selection of a few things, but I'll jump now into teaching. Because teaching, I'm actually teaching since I think about 20 years in different places, Pratt Institute, UPenn, Pratt. Was part of this collaboration with Royal College, Keio University, and Pratt, and now at KIST as a professor for design and ecology. This is a project done at Pratt that I wanted to show because just more thematically how I selected the project that I'm showing here is also about working with materials and looking at craft and working and collaborating with craft people. So there's this company, Simon Pierce, up in Vermont, that is working with ceramics and glass, and it's a family-run business. It's traditional, and we got invited as students to essentially look at the process of how they're working. Then we kind of brought these kind of different ways of approaching it as a design process at Pratt itself. We looked at the molds, we looked at the kind of techniques they are using, and essentially also observed kind of the process that they're using. And a big part of this was that, again, in a similar way as I talked about the European Ceramic Work Center, they were also interested in, I mean, they're used to doing things a certain way, but they were interested in being kind of pushed, you know, a bit further and provoked a little bit into trying out new things that they usually maybe would say no to because they think, okay, we've never done this, this doesn't work. And so we had like a back and forth collaboration with the company. We're showing them things, got feedback from them. And these are some of the projects that came out from the students, where they were also, in the end, which was very unique, received the prototypes from the company, which these are essentially my favorite projects, where it's not necessarily about money going back and forth, it's really about the goods, the experience, the collaboration, and them essentially doing the prototypes and handing them to the students in the end. This is lighting that was done there, and a piece in glass. Now I'm showing more it's like jump projects done at KIST. KIST is at KIST I'm teaching in the department integrated design, so it's not based in industrial design any longer. Oh God. And this project was actually yesterday. I should have been in Cologne yesterday because my student yesterday received a second prize for this at the Cologne design competition. But yeah, so I'm very happy for her. This is, again, it's about working with materials, understanding the process and the production cycle, but also looking at a whole cycle of, you know, like, I'm just going to quickly explain to you, like if you look at rhubarb, a plant that essentially grows at a certain time in the year, juice is being made from that, there is fiber left over from that process. That fiber can be used to create paper-like products. At the same time, right after the rhubarb season, the strawberry season comes, we need containers, packaging in order to sell them. So they are made out of rhubarb fiber, and then all of that is being put back into as a fertilizer for more rhubarb and strawberry in the future. Most of the projects, like I'm right now setting up a biolab at KIST so that we can work further with organic materials, but there are also students working with recycling processes of plastic, for example, or other materials, technical materials. So she got into working with plastic and essentially kind of accumulating it in a layering technique, similar to how stones actually are kind of generated under pressure over thousands, millions of years, kind of recreating that process in order to simulate like a stone-like appearance of plastic recycling. This is a project I indirectly had talked about before. I don't know if you remember it, because there was an almost, if I can say so, direct copy of it in this competition. So I needed to show this because it's the original. And it was taken out, the other one. So she worked with mycelium. Mycelium has acoustical properties. So these are sound-absorbing panels. It's a system of it that is essentially generated as a mold, also through a digital process, kind of inspired also by these corals, and then handmade in these molds in order to create these panels and have these forms grow in the mold. Another mycelium project, which doesn't use the kind of the mix with the substrate as the other one, but essentially it uses the part of mycelium that is kind of leather-like, like the skin-like part of it. And what is very unique about this project, he wanted to create shoes for toddlers, for young kids. And when you look at the process of how usually leather is being used, and the energy that goes into it, and also the leather process, as we know, is very difficult in sustainable terms. It's about more than 1,000 days that go into the creation of a leather product. When you now go and basically also as a 2D pattern look into mycelium as a leather-like material, it's about 42 days that go into the production of it. And in the future, he started to create essentially no use of pattern, no 2D creation of it. Essentially grows into the shape, which is I think spectacular. Will take some more time, but he could prove that it works, and now he has to continue to work with it, I hope. This is a project that uses kapok. Is that how I pronounce it now correctly? Because I always did it in the wrong way. She got interested in using kapok in connection with other materials such as hemp fiber and so on, and using it as a pattern for this collection and these jackets. This is a student who was working with biomaterials. Some of the pieces in her collection are dyed with organic matter, such as avocado peel and so on. But the pattern is actually created through folding of the textile and having the bacteria basically nourish themselves along the folds. She's actually, she won several prizes with it. She's continuing with it. She just created a machine that can do that in a more efficient way. It's really amazing. But that goes back to this aspect of, working with organisms, essentially other creatures, in a co-designing process. So really to look at it is like we're not just kind of using them to get there. Of course, we do to a degree, but we essentially also kind of look at what they need in order to flourish. And this is my last project. That's why I have it at the end. He is from Japan, and he got very interested in the aspect of human waste and the kind of life cycle of it.
That's great. That's great.
Okay, so he created this toilet system that he designed and also built. I was able to help him get a residency at the European Ceramic Work Center, so he could actually produce it himself. This is about separating solids from liquids. So the solid human waste is then used on one hand as a fuel for the kiln, in order to essentially fire the kiln so that he can use that in the process. And on the other hand, he realized that when we look at the solid waste from these cleaning facilities, lots of times they're mixed with industrial waste. So there are metals and other things in there that can be used in glazes. So the glaze that he used for his for this product were made from human waste, and he even got into investigating how the glaze changes depending on what he's eating that day. So going back to this aspect of like creating a closed loop cycle, so that essentially everything in the process is being used and kind of becomes part of a continuation in a sustainable way.
What's the glaze? What is glaze?
The glaze?
¿No viste cuando le ponen el esmalte?
Yeah, it's like, yeah. How did you translate it?
Esmalte.
What is that?
En inglés.
Okay, oh, so yeah, but you wanted to know what is inside of it? Yeah. So by human waste, I mean it's shit. Human solids. So like he worked with the actual material, the powder, in order to create glaze from it. Okay? I'm done.
Please eat more vegetable because we need a green ceramic.
I know. No, it was really interesting how, but it's true how the color changed. You know, well maybe we need to then collect it from different people. Thank you.
I have seen some before, but this is the best one. Very odd and very brave to have this idea.
Completely. I mean, also it's him on the toilet, right?
Yes.
Like he knows what he's doing. I know. Okay. Thank you.
We won't have time to question.
Not really, right?
No, but we can go for a beer and let's talk outside.
And then collect the waste.
You rock.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Gracias.